For a while, I felt stuck in a never-ending financial loop. Every month, I'd try to budget carefully, but by the end, I still didn't have enough for the basics. It wasn't because I was overspending, but because I didn't understand how my money was flowing. What drained me the most wasn't just the lack of money, but the constant anxiety. Each month, I'd wonder what I had missed, why my plans always fell apart. I began to think that this was just how my finances would always be. Then I realized the problem wasn't that I was bad with money, but that I lacked the right approach. I didn't need to change everything at once, just make small, sustainable adjustments. While things didn't improve overnight, I gradually felt the weight lift. Today, I want to share 10 practical tips I've applied to help you take control of your finances and make spending clearer. There was a period when I was spending money almost every day, but I didn't actually feel like I was spending. Coffee in the morning, takeout for lunch, a few small online purchases in the afternoon. Everything happened fast. Tap the card, tap the phone. A notification pops up, then disappears. At the time, I didn't think I had a problem with money. I wasn't buying luxury items. I wasn't making big purchases. I wasn't living beyond my means. Everything was small, reasonable, easy to justify. The kind of spending you tell yourself doesn't really count. But at the end of every month, the same feeling showed up. I'd open my bank account, see a lower balance than I expected, and sigh. Not panic, not shock, just tired. Tired of not understanding. Tired of thinking I didn't do anything wrong, so why does this keep happening? I tried tracking apps. I tried spreadsheets. I tried setting limits. But the more I did, the more it felt like I was monitoring my money instead of actually understanding it. Everything felt distant and cold, like a math problem with no emotion in it. Then one day, not because I had a plan, but simply because I was too tired to open another app, I grabbed an old notebook from a drawer. After I spent money, I picked up a pen and wrote down one line. The amount and what I bought. No categories, no judgment, no asking whether it was a good idea. Just writing it down. That moment stopped me. For the first time in a long while, I actually felt that I'd spent money. Not just seeing a number on a screen, but feeling it clearly. Oh, I just chose to spend on this. That's when I realized the real issue wasn't how much I was spending. It was that most of my spending had never passed through my awareness. When everything happens too fast, money turns into a reflex. And when it is only a reflex, you cannot control it, because you are not really present in the decision. After that, I didn't create new rules. I didn't force myself to track perfectly or write neatly. I kept doing one very small thing. Every time I spent money, I wrote it down. Some days it was only a few lines. Some days more. Some days I forgot. But the change wasn't in the notebook. It was in how I felt before spending. I started pausing just slightly, not to judge myself, but to ask whether I was willing to write that line down. Sometimes I still spent the money, and when I wrote it down, I could see why. I was tired, stressed, wanting quick relief. For the first time, I didn't blame myself for that. I just saw it. Money started telling me the story of my daily life, not through charts or graphs, but through very ordinary lines on a page. And if you have ever been like me, spending steadily, ending every month exhausted, quietly wondering why things never feel settled, you are not lazy and you are not lacking discipline. You are just tired. Writing things down by hand is not about controlling yourself. It is about giving yourself a chance to come back to the moment just long enough to realize, this is my choice, and that is where real change can begin. After I started writing things down, I noticed something strange. Even though I now knew exactly how much I earned each month, that number still didn't make me feel any lighter. I knew my income clearly, but every time I thought about money, there was a quiet pressure underneath, as if this was the amount I was supposed to stretch across my entire life, and if it didn't work, it must be because I wasn't managing things well enough. For a long time, I truly believed that knowing my income meant I understood my finances, yet month after month, the same tension kept returning and I couldn't explain why. The shift didn't come from learning a new system or adding another tool. It came from a very simple moment. One evening as I sat with my notebook, I wrote my income at the top of the page like I always did, and then I started listing the expenses that showed up every month, no matter what. Rent, utilities, internet, insurance. The familiar costs I barely noticed anymore because they had become automatic. When I added them up and subtracted them from my income, I sat there looking at the number that was left. It wasn't shocking or dramatic, but it was smaller than I expected, and more importantly, it was honest. That was when I finally understood something I had never really seen before. The money I earned was not the money I actually got to decide with. The number left after fixed expenses was. Before that, I had been making daily decisions based on a number that was never fully mine, and suddenly it made sense why everything had felt tight for so long. It wasn't that I was bad with money. I was living inside an illusion. Seeing that number didn't make me feel safe or optimistic, but it grounded me. For the first time, I could see the real space I had to live within for the month. And quietly, something else shifted. I stopped feeling like I was failing every time I hesitated before spending. That hesitation finally made sense. I wasn't being anxious or restrictive. I was responding to reality. I didn't cut everything out or create strict rules. I simply kept that number somewhere in my mind as I moved through my days. When I thought about ordering food, buying something small, or saying yes to another expense, that number was there not to scare me, but to remind me of the limits I was actually working with. Some days it changed my choices, and some days it didn't. But even when I spent the money, I felt less angry with myself because I understood the context. I knew what that choice meant within the larger picture of the month. Before, I would look at my bank account and feel disappointed without knowing why. Now I could trace that feeling back to something real. I wasn't irresponsible. I was simply operating without clear boundaries. When you understand your real spending space, your relationship with money changes quietly. You stop asking, "Can I afford this?" in a general sense and start asking, "Does this fit into this month within these limits?" That question is gentler and more honest. If you've ever felt like your income should be enough but somehow never is, there's a good chance you've been doing what I did, making daily decisions based on a number that doesn't reflect your reality. And if that realization feels uncomfortable, it doesn't mean you're bad with money. It usually means you're seeing it clearly for the first time. You're not weak for feeling tension around spending. You're responding to limits that were never visible before. When I stopped trying to stay optimistic about money and started being realistic, I felt lighter, not because I had more money, but because there was less confusion. And sometimes that clarity alone is already a big change. For a long time, I believed I simply wasn't good at saving money. I kept telling myself that once I earned more, once life felt less stressful, once things finally settled down, saving would become possible. Every month I carried a quiet hope that something would be left at the end, and every month that hope faded the same way. Not dramatically, just the familiar realization that there was nothing meaningful to set aside, followed by the same thought, maybe next month. At the time, this felt reasonable. Life already felt full. Rent, food, daily expenses, and small comforts that helped me get through the day. Saving felt like something extra, something I would do when things were easier and I had more room to breathe. And because of that, saving always ended up at the very bottom of my list after everything else had already taken its share. What I didn't understand back then was that I wasn't failing at saving because I lacked discipline. I was failing because I had set saving up to fail. By waiting to see what was left, I had turned saving into an afterthought, something that depended on perfect conditions that rarely exist. Life doesn't leave leftovers kindly. The shift didn't come from a big decision or a strict rule. It came quietly. 1 month after I had already seen my real spending space clearly, I felt the same familiar pressure again. The feeling that this money had to stretch far enough to cover everything, and that if I took anything away to save things, would feel even tighter. and that was when it clicked. I had always treated saving as something that took away from my life instead of something that belonged inside it. That month, I didn't aim for a big number. I didn't calculate percentages or set ambitious goals. I chose a very small amount, small enough that it didn't trigger fear or resistance, and I wrote it down at the beginning of the month. Not as a grand plan, but as a quiet decision. This money was no longer part of my daily spending, not because I was forcing myself, but because I was acknowledging that my future self mattered too. What surprised me wasn't the amount. It was how that decision changed the way I felt. Once saving was already accounted for, the constant pressure softened. I wasn't spending the entire month wondering whether I would manage to save something at the end, because that question had already been answered. There were still tight days. There were still uncomfortable choices. But underneath it all, there was a different feeling. A sense that I wasn't always sacrificing the future just to survive the present. Saving stopped feeling like punishment and started feeling like a boundary, one that protected me instead of restricting me. I also noticed that when saving was no longer optional, when it wasn't dependent on whether I had been good enough that month, I stopped negotiating with myself all the time. Before every small purchase came with an internal debate. Should I spend this, or should I try to save instead? That constant back and forth was exhausting. Now the saving was already done. What remained was what I could choose with. This didn't suddenly make me spend less. I still had days when I ordered food because I was too tired to cook, or bought something small because I needed relief. But the guilt around those choices was lighter because I wasn't breaking a promise to myself every time. I had already kept the most important one. If saving has always felt impossible for you, there's a good chance it's not because you're careless or undisciplined. It may be because you've been asking saving to survive on leftovers, and life rarely leaves any. Putting saving first isn't about being strict or taking joy away from your life. It's simply a quiet way of saying that your future deserves a place now, even while the present is still demanding. And if this feels uncomfortable at first, that doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It usually means you're touching a boundary you've never had before, one that allows you to care about tomorrow even while you're still figuring out today. After I had stopped reacting to my spending with guilt, I thought things would automatically get better. I assumed that once I was writing things down and setting aside savings early, my spending would naturally become more reasonable. But something still felt off. I could see where my money went, yet some weeks it still slipped away faster than I expected, and I didn't always understand why. At first, I tried to fix this by paying closer attention to the numbers. I told myself I just needed to be more careful, more aware, more disciplined. But the more I focused on controlling the amounts, the more tense I felt. It started to feel like I was watching myself constantly, as if every small purchase needed justification. That pressure didn't make me spend less. It just made me tired. The shift came when I stopped asking how much I was spending and started noticing why I was spending. One evening, as I looked back over what I had written down, I realized that certain purchases had nothing to do with need or planning. They showed up on days when I was exhausted, overwhelmed, or emotionally drained. Ordering food after a long day wasn't about convenience. Buying small things online late at night wasn't about wanting the item itself. It was about relief. That realization changed how I saw my spending. Before, I had treated all expenses as if they were the same, as if every dollar carried the same meaning. But they didn't. Some money was spent to keep life running. Some was spent to feel human again. And some appeared because life threw something unexpected at me. Once I saw that my spending stopped feeling like a personal failure and started looking like a reflection of my energy, my stress, and my capacity. I didn't label these categories to control myself. I noticed them because they explained things the numbers never could. When I saw that my wants spending spiked during harder weeks, I didn't rush to cut it out. I understood that it was filling a gap. When unexpected expenses showed up, I stopped treating them as mistakes. They were part of real life, not proof that I had messed up. This was another quiet shift. I stopped arguing with myself about individual purchases and started listening to the pattern behind them. Instead of saying I shouldn't have spent this, I found myself asking, what was happening that day? That question didn't lead to shame. It led to clarity. Over time, that clarity did something surprising. Some spending naturally softened without me forcing it. Not because I was stricter, but because I started responding to the real issue instead of the symptom. When I rested more, the late-night scrolling purchases decreased. When I planned simple meals during busy weeks, the constant takeout slowed down. I wasn't fixing my spending. I was taking care of the conditions that created it. This didn't make my finances perfect. I still had weeks where money felt tight, and days where I spent for comfort instead of logic. But the relationship changed. Spending was no longer something I needed to fight or suppress. It became information, a signal, a way to understand what my life actually felt like. If you've ever tracked your spending and still felt confused or frustrated, it might not be because you're doing it wrong. It might be because you're looking at the numbers without listening to the story behind them. Money doesn't just record what you buy. It quietly records how you're living. And if you see patterns that make you uncomfortable, that doesn't mean you need to punish yourself. It usually means you're tired, stretched, or asking too much of yourself without realizing it. Understanding that doesn't excuse everything, but it gives you a place to start that isn't built on blame. You're not bad with money because your spending doesn't look neat. You're human. And once you stop treating your spending like a problem to fix, and start seeing it as a message to understand, change happens more naturally than you expect. For a long time, I only looked at my money at the end of the month. Every time I did it, came with the same familiar feeling. A quiet tension, a bit of avoidance, as if I were about to be graded. I would open my notebook, add up the numbers, look at the total, and wonder how things had drifted so far off even though I had tried my best during the month. The end of the month always felt like a final verdict, and because of that, I never looked forward to it. I eventually realized that the problem wasn't that I didn't know how to calculate. It was that I waited too long. When I only looked at my money once everything was already done, there was no room left to adjust. All the decisions had been made, all the spending had happened, and the only thing I could do was regret it or blame myself. Looking back at that point didn't help me change anything. It only made me more tired. The shift happened when I started looking at my money earlier, not to control it, but to avoid being surprised by it. Somewhere in the middle of the month or at the end of a week, I would open my notebook and glance at what I had written down. I didn't calculate every detail or analyze deeply. I just looked at the direction the month was going. That feeling was very different. It no longer felt like a conclusion. It felt like a gentle pause, a moment to notice where I was. I started seeing things that I used to notice only when it was already too late. There were weeks when my spending was fine, and weeks when it spiked because work was overwhelming. There were expenses that if I had noticed them earlier, I could have adjusted for in the days that followed, instead of realizing everything at the very end. Looking earlier didn't make me more anxious. It made me less shocked. The most important change was that the sense of failure softened. When I stopped waiting until the end of the month to face my money, it no longer felt like I had only one chance to get things right. Each mid-month or weekly check-in felt like a short conversation. No judgment, no final conclusions, just information. And when I understood things earlier, I didn't need to fix much later. There were months when I looked and knew right away that things weren't neat or balanced, but also noted that there was no need to blame myself. There were other months when I realized I was actually doing okay, and for the first time, I allowed myself to acknowledge that instead of brushing it aside. Looking more often helped me see not only where I struggled, but also where I was managing well. If thinking about reviewing your spending always feels heavy, it might not be because you're bad with money or lacking discipline. It might be because you're letting everything pile up until the very end. When money is only examined at the end of the month, it easily turns into a verdict. When you look at it sooner and more gently, it becomes information. You don't need to check your money every day, and you don't need to turn it into a stressful habit. You just don't have to wait until everything is already over to ask yourself what happened. Looking earlier isn't about making things perfect. It's about giving yourself more breathing room within the month. And if you've ever avoided looking at your money because you're afraid of feeling disappointed, you're not lazy or irresponsible. You're just tired of every review turning into self-blame. When the way you look changes, the feeling changes too. Money stops being something you face once a month with tension and becomes a quieter conversation that happens while there is still time to adjust and take care of yourself. For a while, I was quietly uncomfortable with everything I was learning. Not because it didn't make sense, but because a question kept coming back. What if there just isn't enough money? What if the problem isn't how I manage it, but the fact that the number itself is small? I didn't say this out loud, but it sat underneath everything, especially on harder months when no amount of awareness seemed to create more space. At first, that realization felt discouraging, almost unfair. I had done the work. I had slowed down, written things down, understood my patterns, set boundaries. And yet some months were still tight. There was still tension. There were still choices that felt heavy. For a moment, I wondered if all of this was just another way of asking myself to try harder in a situation that was already demanding enough. What changed wasn't the amount of money. It was the way I spoke to myself about it. Before, when things felt tight, I automatically assumed I had failed. I must have overspent. I must have been careless. I must not have enough discipline. But once I could see my numbers clearly, something became obvious. Even if I had done everything right, the margin was still small. The pressure wasn't coming from mistakes. It was coming from reality. That was an uncomfortable truth, but also a relieving one. Because once I saw that clearly, I stopped asking my system to do something it was never meant to do. I stopped expecting clarity to magically create abundance. I stopped using organization as a way to deny how stretched things actually were. And in doing that, I stopped turning every hard month into a personal failure. This process didn't make me richer. It didn't promise ease. What it did was give me language for what I was already living with. It helped me separate, this is difficult, from I am doing something wrong. Those two had been tangled together for a long time. When money is tight, every decision carries more weight. That doesn't mean you're bad at money. It means the room for error is smaller. And when the room is small, even careful choices can feel heavy. Understanding that changed how I treated myself on those months when nothing seemed to work smoothly. Instead of spiraling into guilt, I could say, this month is hard. Not I am bad. Instead of searching for a trick to fix it, I could focus on protecting my energy, making fewer emotional decisions, and not adding self-blame on top of an already heavy situation. That distinction mattered more than any technique. If your income is low or inconsistent or already stretched thin, this kind of clarity won't turn that into something else, and it shouldn't pretend to. What it can do is stop you from fighting yourself on top of everything else you're carrying. You're not behind because your numbers feel tight. You're not failing because there isn't much flexibility. Sometimes the most realistic outcome isn't optimization. It's understanding. And understanding is what keeps you from burning out while trying to survive. If you've ever felt like money advice only works for people who already have breathing room, you're not wrong. But that doesn't mean awareness has no place in your life. It just means its job is different. Its job isn't to make things perfect. It's to make things honest so you don't add shame to a situation that is already hard. And if nothing else changes right away, that alone is still meaningful. Because when you stop blaming yourself for structural limits, you finally have the space to make calmer choices inside them. That's not giving up. That's being realistic and kind at the same time. The biggest change for me wasn't having more money, but feeling less tense living with it. When I stopped treating money like a test I had to get right and started seeing it as information I could understand, I no longer blamed myself for every spending decision. I knew where I stood, and I understood why some months were harder than others. If you want to start, keep it very small. Tonight or tomorrow, Take a piece of paper and write down just one thing, what you spent today or how much you actually have left this month. Don't analyze it or try to fix it. Just look at it clearly. And if you're watching this feeling tired, thinking you've tried many times and things still don't feel right, you're not lazy and you're not failing. You likely just need more clarity, not more pressure. I started there, and you can start there too at your own pace.